Remember the last shop tour when I said I'd be much more organized once the new shop was built? Well, let me show you how I kinda did that. In this corner, weighing in at just over 5,000 pounds, we have the Fairbanks Model E power hammer. Waiting for its restoration to be completed. This is a massive undertaking. There are a lot of parts that are missing. You can see the linkage arms here do not exist. So that's going to be a project that I am working on with ABOM 79. It's going to be fantastic. I cannot wait to get that done. We might even forge the arms and he can just machine what's left. It is a massive machine. It is just under 8 feet, so it just fits in here, and it will probably destroy my concrete pad. We also have a lovely selection of 3 more of those glorious clamps. I still don't know what to do with them. Maybe someone out there does, because I'd like them not to just sit here forever and ever. This power hammer has a through hole that you can see right in the middle of the forging area, and that's for forging longer things. Very long things. Almost too long. Furthermore, in this corner, there's a litany of blacksmith-ish related tools. I have my anvil that I restored in a video. We have 2 forges. One was for wrench making, the other was just for funsies. An arbor press and a metal cutting bandsaw. It's kind of my metal area, if you so wish to call it. And a little bit to the left here, we have more of those. We have my radial drill press, my smaller tiny original drill press, and a belt grinder. They do a lot of the heavy duty work around here, so they're placed all together. I still have these bread racks from the old workshop. They've worked out great, and this is kind of just where I store some of my auctioned purchases. You can see there's a little grease cup and binoculars, and down there's a timing light, and here's a bunch of leather working, and here's a old Sears and Roebuck catalog reproduction, and a bunch of just other random things that don't really have a place, but they gotta go somewhere. Next up, we have the placement of the saw sharpener, the hand saw sharpener. It's still there, works just fine. It's there currently sharpening a saw for somebody, and I actually do end up using it, which is fantastic. Down here are some fabric cutters that have yet to be restored, and this whole area used to be where my old sandblaster sat on top, but it obviously is no longer there for reasons yet to be explained. I also built a little paint caddy, or whatever you want to call it, just angled spray paint cans in a 2x4 frame. It works fine, it does what it needs to, and if you ever want to copy that design, I'm sure it's already online. Feel the sensuality of this workbench. Look at it, look how it stores things. Okay. If you do notice, a fun game of I Spy, the apple peeler, the lathe, that's another sharpener, a bandsaw sharpener, as well as where I just store my little screwdrivers and bits and pieces that kind of don't go anywhere specifically. I also have a little collection of all the WD-40 that I've been through, and a bunch of different oil gas mixtures in cans, since a lot of the older chainsaws use 10-to-1, 12-to-1, 16-to-1, and then you have the more modern 30-to-1, 60-to-1, 50-to-1, 40-to-1, and there's just all the mixes. So I gotta have all the cans. You can also spot previous restorations, the stapler, the Thor gun drill, the hammer drill. Behind it is the label paster. Here's the little jeweler's lathe as well. I also have little projects or artistic renditions, let's say, of things that people have made for me. This was made locally and printed on a printing press, and this was drawn by Adam C. on Instagram. He makes and sells these. It's hilarious. And fantastic at the same time. It's just my face from the opening of the video. This is the amazing custom spray booth. Only the highest tech materials, such as OSB, are to be used in such an application. You can see I'm working currently on an old battery rectifier slash charger. Regardless, this is where I've slotted the air compressor because I could use it both for painting, which I still haven't done, but I do definitely use it for the sandblaster, which is always a pain to use, but it's a very important part of the workshop. Another essential part of every workshop is the banana phone. If you don't have a banana phone, what are you really doing in your workshop? It's incredibly important to be able to call other bananas when you're working. To the left of the window of the banana phone, you have more restorations. You have the belt lacer, the tiny dental air pump. This is actually a moisture tester that I just got because I could see how moist things were, and that somehow amuses me. Up a little higher, we have the flamethrower slash just tiger torch thing, the jackhammer, the beam drill, and 2 electric planers. They're all fantastically done and not destroyed yet, which makes me very happy. So when I originally built the workshop benching, I thought I'd really use this radial arm saw for some reason, and I've used it just a few times, and now it just kind of collects whatever I have that doesn't fit somewhere else. So I think it's time for that to go. I don't really need it. I can do what this does on a table saw, and I have a table saw. So I'm just going to clear this space and maybe put something else here. This, by the way, is an old vacuum. And finally, some newer equipment. I recently got a Logan Model 200 metal lathe. It's a 10-inch lathe. I installed a new tool post on it. I even have a quick change box for it that requires just a little bit of modification to get on here instead of me having to use all the change gears, which are not exactly ideal. So I'm excited to get to use. You've seen this in a few videos so far, but I really got to get into the zone with this. Just behind the lathe is the white Bridgeport. This is very new, as in just a week or two ago that I received this. I hate that it's white. It makes me sad. So I'm going to probably, at the very least, strip all the paint off this because it drives me nuts. Anyways, this has been fantastic already. I've used it in one video so far, and you can kind of see the chips everywhere that I was doing. It works totally fine. It sounds great, and I'm really happy to have this back in my shop specifically. I'm sure you all recognize this area. This is the zone, the main zone. Here's the evaporest tub. There are some other restorations or upcoming restorations sitting here. You might recognize the bandsaw, but there's also a mortiser and some old mailboxes. And this is where I just kind of like to collect stuff that I enjoy. You know, you have the ball motor. This anvil that I found is awesome. There's the broken part to the Maytag, and then the giant tub of Nutella that needs to be accessed at all times. I also built a plane till that I'm going to give you a little closer look at. You can just see the hay trolley to the top here. That's now my lighting. That was restored a while ago now. But the plane till is just a simple angled sheet of plywood with magnets under each and every plane near the top of the plane to keep them just extra secure. In between are just little strips of plywood, and that's literally it. And I wanted, and I had enough hand planes to go from number 1 all the way to number 8 twice, along with the number 34 on either end. I just thought it would be cool. I have yet to put anything here, maybe the logo or something. I don't really know, but I was hoping to do more by now on this, but I'll get to it. If you can spot a DiResta ice pick, some of the Japanning experiments, small oil cans, like penetrating oil cans, I like to collect if I do come across them. The wrench that I ended up making, the patented twisted handle one. The banana for scale, or the scaling banana, is very important. Here's another upcoming restoration. My mini anvil, which is very, very useful. my tiny clay fireplace that is obviously needed on every workbench, along with a bunch of augers, and the whole back is a saw. Here is my kind of collection of odd, perfect handled items or similar things that I like to keep around and nearby. I ended up using some of these at some point, along with my collection of personally made wrenches that are numbered exquisitely. So here you have, 500 and 1,000 numbered, and 2,000 wrench, and the 3,000th wrench. I've tried to keep those just because it's, I don't know, sentimental at some aspect. I also like to keep a little tiny library, so to speak, of books that I actually ended up using a lot of the time when I'm doing research. So the two most important so far have been the Dictionary of American Hand Tools, and that is a book that'll help you identify antique tools if you even if you have no idea what they do or what they're used for, just by shape or what they're made of will help you kind of figure it out. It's an awesome book. And the Adjustable Spanner book was a book on antique wrenches up until the 1960s, I believe. So more vintage as well. And that's been very useful when someone finds a wrench, they have no idea what it is. Yeah, just look it up and I can help them out. And another Sears and Roebuck catalog, along with some hand plane specific books. I also like to keep any other things that are paper that viewers send to me here and in the little mailbox under here. I also have a reproduction pattern maker's vise that I've used in some videos. It has its applications, but it can rotate a full 360 and clamp things on weird angles and tilt and dance and make French fries. It's very useful. I just probably need to use it more than I have. It's just kind of out of the way and always covered with junk. I'm a failure. What can I say? And now to my favorite tool in the entire workshop. My AJ Wilkinson metal planer. Look at it. Look at the condition. Look at the exquisite nature that it is. Okay, this tool is way too cool for me to own at this moment in time. So I've yet to actually set this up in terms of powering it with these belts here that don't exist, but this is the pulley system that it would go on. But it does have a hand crank option as well. So I will show you very quickly how this works. You would put a piece of metal in a vise here that you wanted to make flat. You would go like this. The table stops over here, and here would determine when the direction of the table changes from forward to reverse. And that's why here on the pulley system, there's a red pulley, which is the powered pulley. The other two are just idle pulleys that do nothing. And when it does reach the stops, an arm moves the pulley to the on position for one direction and then moves it to the off position for the other direction. So once you hit that, you would go back, and then the pulley right here would shift over, and it is now gloriously going in this direction. And the clicking you hear is from the ratchet here. Then that sets how far the tool bit moves left and right every time you do a pass. You can obviously move the head up and down along with left and right, and you can move this as well. This is called the clapper, so you don't cut on the backstroke as well. So it is amazing. I cannot wait to get it set up, and it literally doesn't have rust on it. I don't understand the condition of this thing for being a late 1800s machine. It's just, I love it so much. It's actually a travesty I still haven't set this up. And finally, the, ooh, dirty. The abandoned corner. My bandsaw, my jointer really aren't getting used too much lately. I will pop the bandsaw out when I need it, but the jointer is pushing the limits on if I still need this. I do miss my woodworking, but I got other things to do. There's also a full oven in here that's not yet hooked up, but it will be So I'm hoping to do powder coating. I want to get on that for chainsaws. I think that's a perfect application for the powder coating, something nice and tough for something that is going to be dropped on the floor all the time. So I'm hoping to get that done. This will also be very useful in Japanning. So I can Japan larger parts, which I can do without stinking up the house and killing my entire family, which is borderline useful. I present to you the largest clamp in existence, but also one of the most overbuilt benches of all time. I decided to make a 4 foot by 8 foot massively thick bench that is 4 by 4, so almost 4 inches, probably 3.5 inches thick, of just solid spruce or pine. I'm not exactly sure. It is heavy duty. It is fantastic. I can beat on it. I can put giant clamps on it. I just load this up with all my parts after I take it down from a restoration to basically a million parts. It's fantastic. So I do recommend a stupidly thick wooden bench for really anybody. If it wasn't obvious, maybe it is now. I do love collecting chainsaws along with hand planes. Those are kind of my two core funsies things. Maybe wrenches and screwdrivers, but I'm going to start going down a hole where literally I collect everything. This is where they sit. I'm going to take you up there and I'll show you where all the goods are. I have a lot of hand planes, like possibly too many. There are 4 shelves filled with them. These are all restored or waiting to be restored, I believe, for the most part. I used to have many, many more. I just obviously don't anymore since I've sold them or passed them on to people who can actually use them. The only ones I've kept are ones that are of interest to me at this point. This is how I started. I picked up a plane years ago and the addiction began, and now I'm restoring massive power hammers. So it really, this is a gateway drug, people. A few more goodies from my collection here. This was a hand drill that I did off camera, one of the first things I ever restored, along with some really nice levels and a bunch of stuff in boxes from Stanley. Of course, I am a fan of Stanley. Up here are a number of Stanley plow planes, the 45 and 55 and things like that. I have too many hand planes. Here's all the stuff in boxes that I happen to find throughout the years of collecting. They're in variations of conditions, but I do love each and every one, and that's why I have kept them here. There's also the bandsaw setter. One of my earliest videos is here, along with just a bunch of chainsaws, including the massive one, which extends out very far into the abyss. Here's some other restorations up here. The gun drill thingy and the nail setter, or antique nail gun. This one's interesting because looking at it now, years later, this being one of my first videos, like this is not the best I could have done. I can definitely do better now, so it would be easy or maybe interesting at the very least to maybe redo this, revisit this, and maybe fix all the dents and everything, or at the very least do a better paint job or something like that. It's cool to see kind of the progress over the years. Maybe I'll leave it so it reminds me. Here's an old Russian or Latvian. I think a Latvian sent me this. I might get to it. There is one already being restored on YouTube, so it's nothing novel, but it could be fun just to see. It's such an odd design. And of course, more of the vintage slash antique-ish chainsaws. They're of varying age. This one's obviously much older than that one, but they all do run. I've got them to run and I've used them. But then I just kind of store them up here once I clear the gas out. Some other thing I'd like to mention are the sound dampening panels I've made and installed on the ceiling of the workshop here. It was really, really needed when I first moved in here. It was just insanely echoey. You would hear every noise I put on the workbench. So these have reduced the sound significantly, and they're just a piece of sound insulation with burlap wrapped around it in a 1x3 frame and screwed to the ceiling. You can kind of see how the roof is designed. There's a large angle just so I can have this large shelf on the left here and get up there and store extra things as I need to. The entire workshop is just under 1,000 square feet, so it does give me a lot of room to store garbage in, which is really my number one life passion. This is my welding station that is horrendous. This welder is the worst welder of all time. I'm hoping in the new year to have a new welding setup, a real cart, a nice table, although this old table saw table is not really that bad. And just have all this junk cleared. Like I don't need to have it. What I do need, and what I suggest everyone has, is at least somewhere to put all the loose nuts and bolts from somewhere that you've collected, just so you can go through and find something you need one day. It's somehow been insanely useful to me. I'll end with kind of the projects that I like to have working on in the background, but not necessarily for the camera or for you guys. I have a number 8 plane that I've taken apart and slowly restoring. I'm fixing the scraper plane up. I'm working on a drum controller for the lathe, as well as, having my steel toe Crocs available at all times for safety. Also, I just lined up quickly. You can see the wrenches and their weird differences that I like to play around with. If you're interested in this type of video, I'm basically talking like this on Instagram every day. But these are the minis. This is the first wrench ever made. This is a more modern or more recent, interesting wrench, and I japanned a wrench for some reason. Also, the 9-inch wrench prototype, these are the laser blanks, so those will be worked on eventually. But this is just kind of where I like to keep my projects moderately organized. And finally, the bench of benches, the most flammable and dangerous bench on Earth, possibly. I feel like at some point I should light this on fire. It will be incredibly rewarding. But until then, I hope you enjoyed the little tour. I'll do one in another 3 years, and maybe enough has changed to make it interesting. Anyways, I'll see you all in the new year. Later.